motherfucker. So, let me read this real quick, just to give you a little brief understanding of this. So this is from Paradise Lost. So I think this one was made in the 80s. I'm not really sure if that matters or not. 1979. So, in the beginning, there's a section that says, the argument. I'm just going to read that and see what that is. I have no clue what we're about to jump into. The argument. This first book proposes, first in brief, the whole subject, man's disobedience, and the loss thereupon of paradise, wherein he was placed. Then touches the prime cause of his fall, the serpent, or rather Satan in the serpent, who, revolving from God, and drawing to his side many legions of angels, was by the command of God driven out of heaven with all his crew into the great deep, which action pass over. The poem passed into the midst of things, presenting Satan with his angels now fallen into hell, described here, not in the center, for heaven and earth may be supposed as yet not made, certainly not yet accursed, but in a place of utter darkness, fitliest, some of the wording is kind of odd, fitliest called chaos. Here, Satan with his angels lying on burning lake, thunderstruck and astonished, after a certain space recovers, as from confusion, calls upon him who next in order and dignity lay behind or by him. They confer of their miserable fall. Satan awakens all his legions, who lay till then in the same manner confounded. They arise, their numbers, array of battle, their chief leaders named according to the idols known afterward in Canaan and the countries adjoined. To these Satan directs his speech, comforts them with hope yet of regaining heaven, but tells them lastly of a new world and a new kind of creature to be created, according to an ancient prophecy or report in heaven. Whatever. For that angel were long before this visible creation, was the opinion of many ancient fathers. To find out the truth of this prophecies and what to determine thereupon, he refers to a full council. What his associates thence attempt, pandemonium in the palace of Satan rises, suddenly built out of the deep. The infernal peers there sit in council. That's what we're going to kind of get into. So, like I said, looking through the past of all this and keeping this mindset, right? What we're trying to do is suppose that the Nephilim are indeed the ones in the council of Satan, right? And Satan's the head one, the adversary of God. Now, I know this is a very Christian way of thinking and stuff, but I think, again, we're going to keep our minds in the idea that these beings are somehow either part of the pantheon, the multitude of pantheons of the old gods, or something else akin to it. I don't really know yet. Are these the Aeon, in my book, Satan and his angels, or are they the Titans? Because that line there intrigues me. They rise, their numbers, array of battle, their chief leaders named, according to the idols known afterward in Canaan and the countries adjoining. Their chief leaders named according to the idols. So what does that mean? They were named, like the fuckers that were under Satan were like given name according to these idols that were already amongst the people. So are the Satan and his angels, the Nephilim, we're going to say that that's who they are. Are they going to place themselves inside what already were the pagan gods, or are they indeed the pagan gods to go forward? I don't know yet. So that's our first fucking question before we even really get into the Bible. Let us just jump right into this and see just what we can find. We're gonna go on to the screen capture. Oh God. Who the fuck is Steve Magnati? Or whatever. Anyway, the angels. A cappella. In what way are the idols connected to demons? Deuteronomy. Okay, there's that. Nephilim, who were they? Let's go to that first. That's what we're trying to figure out, are we not? Genesis 6 and Numbers 13, pre-flood and post-flood, mention the terms Nephilim. That has been central discussion for many fucking years. Oops, excuse me, for many years. Satan or his fallen angels bred with human women and had offspring that were called Nephilim. Okay. Fallen angels or Satan possessed men and called them to breed with women. Sons of God were the godly line from Adam and Seth down to Noah. And the Nephilim were fallen children who sought after false gods. These are different views. Okay, fallen men view. Godly men, sons of God, took ungodly wives, and their descendants followed after the false gods, rejecting God, and fell far from God in wickedness. All right, here we go. Now it came about when men began to multiply in the face of land, and the daughters were born to them. And the sons of God, Bene Elohim, saw the daughters of men were beautiful. I know, right? And they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. Okay. The Nephilim were on earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God, are these different? Okay, whatever. Came into those daughters of men. Yeah, no shit. And they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Okay. Then the Lord saw that wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. It's kind of just weirdly written. I'm sorry. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, so that's jumping back into what they are. We should by all means go upon and take possession of it, for we will surely overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, We are not able to go up against the people, for they are too strong for us. So they gave out to the sons of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, The land through which we have gone in spying it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great size. There also we saw the Nephilim. And we became like grasshoppers in our sight. I'd be like, dude, just tell me straight. What did you see? I was like, I saw this, and it was pretty nuts, and men of great size. So we, like grasshoppers, we were out of sight. Like, dude, stop. What did you fucking see? Okay? I'm tired of this dancing around shit. That's what I'd be saying. At this point, the identity of the Nephilim and the sons of God is still being debated in Christian cycles. There is a popular unbiblical view that the Nephilim are space aliens. Okay. Of course, most creationists rightly reject this particular view for multiple... Yeah, no shit. Some believe that fallen angels bred with women and result in giants called Nephilim. Some believe the sons of God were the results of fallen angels who overtook ungodly men to breed with women. Some believe they were the Sethites. What the fuck that? Descendant of Adam's son Seth. There are some minor views as well, such as kings, rulers, or heads of leading family groups as being godly from Psalms 82. Okay, so there is a great deal of confusion over the word Nephilim. No one today really knows what it means. It is related to the verb series to fall in Hebrew, which is why some direct this to fallen angels, or more appropriately, the offspring thereof. However, this has also given strong support to the view that men have fallen away from God. It was these two concepts that had helped give rise to the various views mentioned above. Safe to say we're going this alone, seems like. So far, which is what we're trying to fucking do. Let's just test that real quick. Let's test that little fucking theory. Ooh, here we go. A modern person asks a modern question. Could pagan gods have actually been archangels? Archangels, no, unless one wants to believe what is in the Book of Enoch, which is not penned by Enoch. It did not exist prior to 200 BC. Here we go. They were angels to be sure. They left their place in heaven and came to the earth, materializing human bodies in order to mate with human females. The hybrid children of these unions were the Nephilim, or giants. They were called the Men of Fame. This fits almost perfectly with Greek mythology, where the gods Zeus, Apollo, and others mated with women, and their offspring were the demigods. Many men such as Hercules, Perseus, Achilles, Jason, etc. Men of fame. Here we go. We're kind of getting into some debatey stuff. My God. According to the Genesis 6, some of the fallen angels took human wives and bore children who were giant hybrids called the Nephilim, the fallen. Nimrod was a hybrid of a fallen angel and a human woman. He was a giant among men like the Nephilim of Genesis 6. People followed powerful men who could lead them in battle. Some were even worshipped as gods, so he became a great tyrant. See, we kind of come into I think we come into a bit of a fucking problem a lot of the times with this stuff, because let's go back to the fucking thingy. We come into a bit of a problem, I think, because you're always going to get either, a Jew, mostly Christian, let's be honest, a Christian view of, once you start diving into this, Jesus Christ, damn it, no, stop, let's just try to figure this out, I don't know if that means what we're doing is blasphemous or not, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of stuff about this, which tells me, god damn it, it's going to be a goddamn thing. Now, this is going to be just tough, man. It's going to be really tough. I don't even know how to do this. I mean, we're studying, so there is really no way to do this. It's just doing it. Man, oh man, I don't know. We got ourselves a fucking impossible journey, it feels like, ahead of us. Finding the connection to all this. Now, we have to we got to set up goals along this journey here before we really start doing the readings. I think it's at this point we're gonna have to just kind of jump into this and read it. But the point that I don't want to go into, so if I'm going to read the book, the Bible, we're going to start getting into the everything of God, at least the God of the Jewish people. That's going to be the problem. We don't really want to get too much into that shit. I mean, we have no other choice, do we? Maybe that's what it's going to have to be. Because I don't really see another way through this. I don't know, man. I really don't know. I don't know where to start with. Should I start with the Bible? Or should we start with Paradise Lost? That I do not know. What does your heart tell you? Well, my heart tells me Paradise Lost. Man. So maybe we'll do a reading then of Paradise Lost. We'll have to do that. We'll start here. But this video, we need to we should just make sure that we know exactly what we're looking for before we even start there. But we do know that we found a big connection between these two things, at least in our minds. So we're trying to see if Satan and his fallen angels, or the archangels, or whatever the fuck they're called, are indeed in connection with the Nephilim, which some seem to believe that in some way, shape, or form. But our biggest thing here is, like, how can we find the old gods? So, the Canaanite idols and stuff seems to be the one that they really mention. But what about the gods outside of that? Because you got to think, when it comes to mankind in the Middle Ages and shit, like after Jesus' death, Christianity goes out there and says, okay, let's defeat the gods of old now with Christianity as man. The Bible really shows the defeating of gods, the Jewish Bible, whatever the fuck that's called again, I don't remember. But the Jewish Bible really seems to show God defeating the old gods and setting his people up. The Christian book, the New Testament, is really concerned about Jesus Christ and his, like, getting everyone to, like, go into the kingdom of heaven and all this stuff. And from that point, he died. So it's like God set a pact with man or something. I don't really know. And then now it becomes to man's hand, and he's got to be the one that goes around and spreads the will of God, right? So the first act, God was total control over the people, and he interacted in their lives. The second half is like, well, he's like, I got to pass this along to them. And then they're the ones that go out and defeat the old gods. And so there's a thing that Jacob brought up that we really like to explore in the book, and that's the idea of the Aeon and the Titans. The only way you can give them true power is through worship. Through worship and understanding and knowing, and you give them life. But when you start to shy away from them, you take their power away, and so you cut their connection to the world here. That's kind of where we're at right now. But it seems like the Bible and the New Testament really want to focus on taking these old pagan gods and making them this created enemy called the idols, or the false gods. It seems like that's what it's about. I mean, for God's sake, I got over here the Ecclesiastical History of Bede, and this book is exactly what I was talking about. It's this whole thing, like, he kind of talks about the history of England a bit, but what is he really concerned about? The Christianization of Britain and England as a whole. So this book was written around 731 AD. For context, the Vikings started to invade about 100 and something years later, right? Because it says 731, well, in 865, so around 100 years, I can't do that math. That's when the Great Heathen Army invaded England. So this is before the Vikings really got their fucking mitts in there and they started muddying this shit up, which really gave the church this kind of fervor to quell the heathens. So our biggest thing here is trying to understand the idea that these peoples feel like they're doing the work of God. And God has told them, I guess in their minds, in some sense, like, there is only Jesus Christ and he's the Savior, and if you don't believe that, then that's not good. You know what I mean? So I can't, it's just the best way I can describe it in my mind, at least, is God goes and helps the peoples, which is why we're going to do the reading. We got to back that evidence up. He's the one that's in control and jumping down, and he's constantly dealing with his people, and he's the one that leads his people out of Egypt, and he's the one that fucking is at the helm of everything. I know that he is in this as well. But here's my point. This really talks about that. This one is the story of Jesus Christ, which is apparently the Son of God, which is apparently means he is God or something. God in human form. I don't understand that part still, but whatever. I'm not denying it. I just don't get it. And he is convincing everyone to become one with the idea that he's presenting at this kingdom of heaven. And you just need to accept him as a savior. And at that point, then you'll be able to go into the kingdom of heaven, which to me sounds like the same God trying to reach out and gain strength. Why would he be sitting and trying to gain strength? A threat. That threat would have to be, now we're going to jump into bead and like all that stuff. Now we're talking about a world enveloped in paganry. Why is paganry bad? Those are different gods. They don't need the power. God needs the power. This original Jewish God, what was his name? Elohim? Or Yahweh? I don't fucking know the difference. I guess it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm just super confused about all this stuff. I guess my question that I really, really want to explore, and I know this might sound blasphemous, again, but what if God isn't the God that we think he is? What if, like, he began losing control in some way, shape, or form, and I don't know why, or he needed to stop interacting personally with it, and instead he needed to do it outside-wise, and then he's like, well, I can send this conduit down of myself, this automaton, if you will, to which I can convince them to worship me, and not in a bad way. I'm going to disclaimer that. But maybe there's a different war going on that we don't understand. And they need us, these higher, like maybe there's multitudes of beings, and they fucking need us for this reason or that reason. You know what I mean? Like I'm not denying, I'm not saying God's an evil God. I'm just saying maybe he needs us for something that we won't understand, and he doesn't want to bother even saying. Because it's like, I don't need, you know, like you deal with it as human beings. Don't tell them everything. Tell them what they need to know to get their shit done. You know, you see in the military easily. You don't tell everybody exactly what's going on. You tell them what they need to know and how they need to do it. So that's the only thing I can really think of, because I just look and I see God in control and God convincing man to take control, because God tells Moses, which is the same kind of thing, to take the people out of Egypt into the promised land. For what reason, I don't know. This one, after Jesus dies, people do that themselves. They raise up fucking armies, when we're talking about the Crusades and shit, to get the fucking Muslims out of Israel or whatever. I think it's pretty obvious I don't know a whole lot about this, so. I don't know, man. I really don't understand. I just clearly see that there's something not quite right going on. Something. What that is, I can't quite say. We just have a whole lot of fucking sources to really comb through, and I don't really know how to. Because, I mean, as I'm reading, like I was reading this, and I kept losing faith in it. It was just, like, and look how good God is, look how good God is, and then if you follow God, everything's good. And the reason that England's on the rise is because they're doing what they're supposed to do. We're getting rid of those fucking false gods. But the sad thing is, he doesn't talk about what does that even mean? What is a false god? He just keeps saying false idols, false idols, false idols. These Britons and their false idols, like, but he doesn't go into what they're doing and what those false idols mean and what their names are and any of that shit, because he doesn't. It clearly, this ecclesiastical bead clearly doesn't want to give any power, because once we acknowledge by name that there are other higher beings, maybe that gives them power, like I was saying, and maybe these bishops and these, you know, whatever the fuck, Saint Bede, the Venerable Bede, he was just a monk. A monk in person is who practiced religious asceticism or whatever. He served himself to God, and in that acknowledgement, he cannot acknowledge another high being. See, I don't know, man. Because if I go to like a Catholic priest, if I go to a fucking Jewish, what are they called? whatever their priests are called for the Jews. If I go to one of them, or if I go to even a Protestant fucking priest or whatever they're fucking called, pastor, I'm not going to get anything but whatever they're selling. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm just going to get what they're selling. Jews don't really care about conversion. They know who they are, and they're like, nah, we're not taking. The Jews are like the Air Force, you know, like they're going to try to deter you away, and not like. Or the Catholics are like the Marines, like, come on, man, let's go, you know. So, that'd be the Protestants probably. But I just like don't know if I would ever get anything straight from them. I kind of have to go about this my own way because you're just going to get deterred. And if I go to someone who's not quite a believer, I'm going to get, you know, their bullshit. And this is your own journey, right? So this is just the one side of the story that I'm trying to unravel. What is God? And I guess so far, the only thing we can do is seek to discover, in some way, shape, or form, seek to discover the idea of what does man think God is, according to all of his sources. So, in saying that, which means we will be getting to the Bible, I do have this Catechism of the Catholic Church, and I have Talmud, however the fuck you pronounce that. I still don't know what this is. I really don't know what a Talmud is. Biblical history, it just says. The nature and scope, whatever. I have the Talmud, I got the Church Catechism, straight from the fucking Vatican. We have the two Bibles. We can try to find more sources, like the Venerable Bede talking about the ecclesiastical history of England. I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, the ecclesiastical history of the English nation from the comings of Julius Caesar into this island in the 16th year before the incarnation of Christ till the year of our Lord 731 by the Venerable Bede. For some reason back then they wanted to have really long names of books. We can get sources like this. Like I said, I have another one called the Church of Scotland. Yeah, that's all I have right now, but we'll get more if we need them. And we'll just have to study. But I think beginning with this, Paradise Lost, is the road to go down. So, let's get a little, should we jump into Paradise Lost without any context? Or should we just do a little context thinking? Let's look up at least John Milton. John Milton, English poet and civil servant from the 1600s. Man, the 1600s was that era. This kind of great reform, if you will. John Milton was an English poet intellectual. His 1667 epic poem, Paradise Lost, written in blank verse, is a poetry written with regular metric, unrhymed lines. Has been described as probably the most common and influential form that English poetry has taken since the 16th century. Crikey. Was written in a time of immense religious flux and political upheaval. It addresses the fall of man. It's kind of like the time we're in now, the 1600s was, including the temptations of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel Satan. Okay, and Guards of Eve. It's a great poem. An epic poem, or simply an epic, is a lengthy narrative poem typically about the extraordinary deeds of extraordinary characters who, in dealing with gods or other superhuman forces, gave shape to the mortal universe for their descendants. Is this book in creation? Is this like a satanic creation, or is this? Let's think of what do Catholics think of Paradise Lost? Was a devout Christian, but heavily anti-Catholic. I'm curious as how much the sentiments carried into Paradise Lost. It used to be a banned book for Catholics, banned by the church, so they did not like it then. So I think that answers our question. So this was something that the Catholics might not have liked. Banned book, Paradise Lost. That wasn't the first time a translation was banned. When Paradise Lost was first translated into Germany, it was instantly censored for writings about biblical events in too romantic a manner. The Catholic Church banned Paradise Lost in 1732. The reasons are kept in the Vatican archives. Okay, so we do know that the Catholics are not okay with this book. At least they weren't back in the day. If it was written in the 16 whatevers and about 100 years later or less, now they're banning it. Interesting. Very interesting, keeping these two together. So, interesting then. We know that we have something to explore now because, well, they don't really like this book. So it doesn't really serve a Catholic understanding, nor does it serve some sort of Jewish one. Why did he make it? Would anti-Catholic just mean some sort of Protestant reform bullshit? Man should deter life the way he thinks it should, not what the church thinks. Or is it bigger than that? It must have meaning if it's still fucking here. If the church could not make this go away, people hit it for a reason. And that reason's bigger than we'll know right now, because to us it's so small. Now you can go on television and say horrible things about religion, and people go, oh, and they clap to it. We're too busy applauding people for weirder shit. So I think that's a great, then we're going to have to start here at Paradise Lost. Seems to be inevitable. So, the next one will be a reading of Paradise Lost. We'll just go section by section, chapter by chapter, or book by book apparently. And then we'll see what happens.